Be sure to subscribe to the Healthcare Security Cast so you don't miss a single episode. We're on multiple platforms including Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, and Audible, just about anywhere where you can listen to a podcast. For links to all of these sites, for links to join the Healthcare Security Cast community groups on LinkedIn and Facebook, or if you're interested in being a guest or being a sponsor, you can find all of this through one link. Check out our link tree at linktree/Brian Hamilton. That's linktr.ee/Brian, B-R-I-N-E, Hamilton. Again, that's linktr.ee/Brian Hamilton. And before we get into the show, I just want to thank our sponsors, 3D Network Technology. Reliability is our core value. Visit 3dnetworktechnology.com. And Genetech, delivering security strategies for healthcare. Visit Genetech, that's GENETEC.com. And also the Change Execution Group and 360 Life Transformations. Visit 360lifetransformations.com.
Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast, the podcast dedicated to healthcare security, safety, and emergency management. If you are involved with a healthcare security program or desire to be, this podcast is for you. Join the conversation as we discuss the issues that matter to healthcare security professionals while leveraging the expertise of healthcare security thought leaders and experts in personal development. And now, here's your host, Brian Hamilton.
Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast for Thursday, March the 11th. I'm joined today by Katherine Nixon. Katherine, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me on your show, Bryn. I'm really looking forward to having a good conversation with you about the very important topic of sleep. So thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming on. And the first thing I always like to do is get to know the guest on the show a little bit better. So I'll start by asking, who is Katherine Nixon?
Thank you. And so my name is Katherine Nixon. I'm based in Sydney, so I live down under, and I've been in healthcare, almost 30 years now. There's nothing else I would do. I actually have a bit of a unique journey as to how I ended up in the sleep health space, but it all started by entering into the healthcare space. And I uniquely entered into the healthcare space at the age of 14, going on 15. So quite unusual. And I ended up in healthcare at such an early age. I actually think my early starters probably helped me to become who I am today. I'm a hugely empathetic person, and I really like to help people who are struggling with their health and really with their sleep. And the reason I ended up in health so early is that I always wanted to help someone or help animals. And I was at that career that stage at school where you have to sort of go on a bit of a careers week, and you've really got to, at a young age, really decide what do you want to do. And it's a hard thing to do when you're just a teenager. But I knew I wanted to help people, and I had a friend that suggested, or a family friend said, why don't you go and check out nursing? And so I did, and I ended up getting a job out of a work placement in a nursing home. And that's how I started in healthcare. So I had a real kind of healthcare job at the age of 14. And my journey sort of started in aged care. I did that for about 6 years while I was at school and university. So I went on to do my Bachelor of Nursing. And from there, my health journey has really taken me around the world. I've worked in the UK health system for about a decade. That's where I ended up in sleep. And I've been pretty lucky. I've done lots of different areas in healthcare itself, but it was in London that I ended up making the change, the transition into sleep. And it was at that point that I made my transition really from the hospital and the community care settings, because I was an agency nurse in London, running around, like doing so many, in so many different spaces. And I ended up deciding to go into commercial health. And one of the reasons for that is that I wanted to change from the shift work, because shift work is a big thing in healthcare. And I ended up working for one of the leading companies in sleep, which was ResMed. And that's where I started my journey in sleep. And it's an area I really enjoy. So I've been in it for a long, long time now. I see the good and the ugly side of it. And I've had a great opportunity to see how I can help people in that space. And I've also have a great interest in the gut health space. So that's kind of fueled my interest in the last couple of years. And I'm doing some sort of nice, interesting things and combining those two areas together. And they're the two almighty pillars in our health, which is sleep and gut. So I don't think I do anything other than work in healthcare. It's kind of my sweet spot, and I can truly say, actually, I really enjoy working, and so I'm pretty lucky in that regard. So thanks for asking.
You're very welcome. And I guess kind of the interesting thing too about when we're talking is that it is World Sleep Week. So want to
Mm,
obviously acknowledge that. And you just the thing that kind of intrigued me when I was looking for people to speak on this topic was that you called yourself a sleep hacker. So can you tell
mm.
us what a sleep hacker is? And you kind of alluded to what got you involved in the work, but if you could talk about that a little bit, that'd be interesting to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think when consumers are looking to engage in things to improve themselves or interesting, and when we're looking at health, we're always looking for short and sharp ways to get stuff done. And when you hack something, that's a great way to do it. So in sleep, one of the things I've learned in my journey in health and definitely sleep is that there's never just one thing you have to do. You generally have to do a few things, and so hacking your way through different kind of strategies and different things that you can implement is really how I came up with the sleep hacker term. And I'm quite a relatable person. So, I like to translate science into relatable terms for the general person to understand. And I understand actually how hard health can be when you've lost it and when it's not working. And I understand how hard it is when you need to try and rebuild it. And I think whenever you go on that journey of change, you need to find you need to find lots of little different wins to bring it together. And I think when you find little things that work, you sort of get really motivated and it kind of pushes you along. And so hacking is a great way, I believe, that you can do that without feeling that you have to, I guess, feel like you're being too invasively, sometimes when you're in healthcare, it can be quite invasive. But really, the truth is, there's a lot of stuff that we can do outside of actually being, in the healthcare sort of model where you may be sick and being treated. There's a lot of stuff you can do in your own spaces to really look after yourself and make things work better for yourself. So that's really how I came up with the sleep hacking term. And look, I think sleep is just I'm so hugely passionate about it, and it's such an important area of your life that if it isn't working, you've really got to get it working, and you need to do everything you possibly can to make it work. Because if you want to build health and you want great health, you've got to find it, and you usually need to get to the root cause. And when you get to the root cause, you usually have to implement a few things. So you've got to kind of hack your way to good health. And sadly, look, many people on the planet really aren't in the best shape, and sort of get lost along the way. But if you can implement some good simple strategies for yourself in your own kind of day-to-day stuff, it's pretty impactful. So yeah, so that is what lights me up, is really helping people to find the simple strategies just to get stuff done.
Oh, absolutely. Now, I think you alluded to this as well, but sleep is definitely something that's overlooked in terms of our overall health.
Mm.
And I think, that's kind of a broad problem. Why is sleep so important?
Gosh, it's everything. Sleep is everything in your health. And you're right, it's so undervalued, it's so misunderstood, but it's very important. If you don't have good sleep quality, then your health won't thrive. Like, we have sleep, but it's a lot of science is still trying to learn a lot about sleep. It's one of the most complex physiological processes that actually happens in the human body. And I think a lot of us just think that we go to bed, we stick our head on the pillow, and that's kind of it. But when we sleep, a lot of important things are happening. It's a pretty active process. Our body is really busy when we're asleep, and it's really busy because it wants to help regenerate things. It wants to help repair things internally inside the body. And the reason for that is that it wants us to perform well during the day, and it wants us to function well. And that's not just by the way that we walk or the way that we think about things. It's everything, with the way that we digest, with the way that our hormones work, with the way that our heart works, with the way that our brain works, from our emotional health to the way that we cognitively process things. So sleep, if we don't actually get sleep, all of these other processes in the body begin to fail because they can't repair and restore. And I think the timing of our podcast now in this World Sleep Week is just so timely. And, a week is just not even enough for people to try and put it all together for sleep. I'm doing some pretty cool things I'm making it World Sleep Month, because I think that's just enough to kind of get the wheels going. But, if you want more health, you have to find your sleep. And when your sleep doesn't work, you have a huge domino effect throughout your health. You may not notice things initially, which I think becomes part of the problem. And sometimes a lot of the stuff that becomes dysfunctional in the body it's not obvious to the general person that maybe sleep is the problem, because these connections aren't there. And I think a lot of that comes back to the awareness that happens at a public health level across the world. Sleep is at epidemic levels, and public health systems are really worried about the impacts that are starting to come through, but they're not obvious. And sometimes sleep can slow burn for a long, long time while things manifest inside ourselves before they really become symptomatic. And then usually you're in the ditch, and you've got to find your way out. So I hope actually in our discussion we can, really start to enlighten people and inspire people, just to start thinking about the 1/3 of their lives, why sleep is so important.
Absolutely. Now, I'm just thinking in terms of, because we're talking primarily to healthcare workers, and obviously shifts vary. You alluded to shift work earlier.
Mm,
For those who work nights, what is the importance of actually getting light? Because, I went through this where I worked nights for, I believe it was about 4 years straight.
mm.
So I was typically sleeping during the day. But what's the importance of light? And you alluded to gut health earlier, light and diet in terms of sleep.
Yeah, look, light is very important. Believe it or not, light is very important in sleep. Sounds a bit strange, doesn't it?
It does.
Because, we sleep with the lights off. But look, the reason light is important is that light is one of the things that helps to drive our circadian rhythms. And it's one of the things that is there. So to be able to sleep at nighttime, we have to, when we go to bed, which is obviously a little bit different when you're a shift worker because you're generally sleeping during daylight hours, you have a sleep-wake cycle. And it likes routine, but it likes light. And the reason for that is that one of the things that helps to drive our ability to go to sleep, and then our ability to wake up and be able to just repeat this like in a groundhog fashion every 24 hours, like this cycle, are different hormones. And so we've probably heard of may have heard of the hormone called melatonin. It's like the hormone of darkness. And melatonin helps us to feel drowsy. Now, one of the things that helps to stimulate the production of melatonin is light. So when we don't get enough exposure to light, and daylight is sort of what we're seeking really, it is that helps to reduce the melatonin during the day, so that as we go into things like the darkness in the evening and we're meant to be getting tired, our melatonin sees this, as light reduces our sensory, like in our brain senses this change in light, so it produces more melatonin, which helps us to feel drowsy. And so then when light comes on again in the morning, our brain senses this and goes, let's drop down the melatonin, other hormones kick in, and it's like, we need to start to wake up now. So when you don't get adequate exposure to light, it does it affects the way that your circadian rhythms want to work, because humans, we like consistency, and there's a lot of natural processes that happen in the body. But when we introduce all of our modern ways of life that aren't meant to be there, we've introduced a lot of man-made types of things. We want shopping centres open all night. In healthcare, you know, one of the things you do sign up for is sort of shift work. It's sort of, you don't realise that until I think you're in it. But it does play a bit of havoc, and I think some people are more sensitive to it than others. But yeah, shift work, unfortunately, is just one of these things where people do struggle, do feel like they do suffer with sleep loss, and they feel deprived in sleep. But you know, one of the nice things, and you're talking about like diet, and I've obviously mentioned like gut health before. Uh, there are a lot of great daytime solutions that we don't typically think of, that we can take advantage of, and what we eat. So imagine, you know, eating for sleep. You know, and this comes back to gut health. We can do things in our diet, and these are not crazy things. These are really basic things. Doing more of actually the good basic stuff. We can do some really good stuff to fuel our gut health, which is all driven by a lot of what we eat. And you know, if we start thinking about like things like micronutrients and macronutrients, these trace elements of nutrients that come from our food sources. Sometimes we have to get them from supplements as well, because for different reasons we can't always get them from food. But these nutrients actually help us to you know, to support our hormones in our body, and some of these then support our hormones that help us to sleep, these sleep promoting hormones. So the sleep gut connection is very, very interesting. And I've actually got, there's an ebook that I have out now called The Road to Healthy Sleep. And if you're really interested actually in sort of, you know, getting a bit of a surface level on that, I have a section in there that talks about the micro and the macronutrients. And it's an area this really interests me. So yeah, if you're interested in diet, I have a few interesting bits and pieces that you can read about it. So yeah, so we can, you know, although we're doing shift work, we can actually use food to help us in our sleep journey as well.
So, do you have any like specific recommendations in terms of certain things that people should be eating, especially if they're working the night shift? What are some of those things that will contribute to the good gut health?
Yeah, well, so good gut health loves a good variety of food. So diversity. So having diversity in your gut is great, and the reason for that is that the more diversity of great foods that you eat, and this is like prebiotics now, fueling the gut. This helps us to produce a diverse range of gut bugs, like good gut bugs. And we need good gut bugs to help produce lots of chemicals again that get used in the body. So eating, like, you know, for instance, lots of good whole grain foods like lentils. If we're looking at nuts and legumes, lots of plant food, so lots of green, or like think about the rainbow. If you try and eat a range of the rainbow of vegetables and fruits, like those are probably the biggest fuelers when it comes to what your gut loves. And eating obviously less processed food. So it doesn't mean that you can't have all those fun things in life, but trying to have like the 80-20 rule, trying to have more of the good stuff and less of probably you know, the stuff that maybe isn't as good for us is great for fueling gut health. And look, I think when it comes to food, I think a really interesting way to think about it is that you want to eat diversity. You want to try and eat regularly throughout the day. I think some people try and starve themselves, and sometimes people don't actually eat enough. Believe it or not, you actually need to eat enough food in a day. So I think some people are struggling with weight and different things. And night shift, look, shift work really throws your whole body out of whack. So sometimes your appetite is just all over the place. And I think when you're a shift worker, I think the more aware you are of the things that are a problem, like your appetite might be affected. So you're probably not going to want to eat at all of the times. You may not get that same sensation to eat, but I think if you can become quite consistent and routine, and because remember, the body likes consistency. We like routine, and the body thrives on that. So I think when we work in these abnormal states like shift work, if we can be consistent in the timings of when we eat, the types of food, preparation is a big thing. So if you can go to your shift prepared, than sort of going and eating out of the vending machines and having coffee all night, because that's the big thing. When you do shift work, sometimes it's because you have this sleep deprivation. You want to fuel yourself on stimulants like, different sort of caffeinated drinks, whether they're hot or cold, and because we just need to kind of keep this buzz of waking up. But then that's problematic. I think sometimes we do shift work, we don't drink enough water either. So, drinking enough water is really important. But when you go home to bed, one of the really interesting things, when you look at like strategically how you can eat, is that, you need to eat a good balance of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats throughout the day. And you need to try, and when you're eating, you need to try and combine these in your different meals. So not just have protein or just have a carb meal. You want to be strategic. You want to have a bit of carb, fat, and protein at each of your different meals, including the snacking time, because the idea of that, it makes you feel more full. But in the hours before you go to bed, if you can have, one of the benefits to having a meal that has a bit more carbohydrate in it is that carbohydrates help to, the right carbohydrate, complex carbohydrates, not simple sort of carbohydrates that might kind of make you more alert because they the way they might, the way they might, produce like that glucose in your body. But these good complex proteins can actually help so one of the things to help you produce more melatonin is you need the precursor to that is serotonin. So you need serotonin to get to melatonin. But to help in the brain doing this conversion, there is another amino acid that, that your body requires to help this process actually happen. And so if we can have carbohydrates those couple of hours before, it can help. You don't have too much protein, a little bit of protein, but not too much. You want to have more of the carbohydrates because it actually helps in the process of this serotonin conversion to melatonin. But I think preparation is a big thing. Eating lots of good, healthy foods and drinking lots of water, and trying to stay away from the caffeinated foods and drinks.
Absolutely. No, some good stuff. Now, you talked in there too about macronutrients and micronutrients and supplementing when we need to. And you also touched on
Yep.
the prebiotics. What are your thoughts on prebiotic supplementation?
Well, look, there are definitely, so I'm definitely all for good supplementation, because I think the reality is that we can't get, even if you have a great diet, we can't always get everything from the food we eat. And that's just due to the way that foods are. We're, processing and we're growing foods today. We've lost probably a lot of different nutrients in that process. So we do actually have to think about some supplementation. And sometimes if you're under the care of like a dietitian, they can be great people to really like help to put logic around this. But, prebiotics, there are companies out there that sell some great prebiotic formulas that you can buy if you think that you just can't get everything from the diet, or you're struggling to eat the amount of prebiotics that you need to eat. So, sometimes in health, when you need to make change can be hard. So sometimes along the way, we need a bit of a helping hand. So if you're someone who maybe hasn't had the best diet and you really have to rebuild your diet, change takes time. So, it may be that you can't implement all of the strategies that your doctor or dietitian, for instance, might want you to do because it's just too hard, and you may need to do a stepping stone. And so implementing some good supplements out there on the market is a great way to do that. And food companies today, the ones doing great stuff, have become quite clever with the way that they produce food. So they have things that are done in powders now. You can put things into a smoothie, you can dilute things in water, you can sprinkle things on your cereal, you can bake with some of these things, and you can sort of manage to find those prebiotics that you need. So prebiotic fibers are very important. I can't understate that for your gut health. To have great gut health, you must have a good fuel of prebiotics. Now, you've got probiotics too, which are different. And I think sometimes people get confused between the probiotics and the prebiotics. So the prebiotics are the fuel that you need. Your gut gut bugs need to eat, so they're looking for prebiotics. If they can't find the prebiotics, they'll go looking for other things. And sometimes the things they look for aren't always good, and that can affect then the types of chemicals that they're producing in your gut. So you want they want good prebiotics to eat, and in return you'll get good diversity of the gut bug range. Now you can eat probiotics to help top you up as well. So sometimes when people are really building their health, their gut health, you need probiotics. But I think where it gets a bit confusing out there for probiotics is there's so many to choose from. It's like we're spoiled for choice. It's like, what do you do? Which ones do you pick?
Right.
And I think this is where I think consumers actually get really stuck. Like sometimes there's so much choice. It's like, what the hell do you pick? And so my suggestion is that, look, I actually have my own dietitian who I connected with this a couple of years ago. And you might think that's really strange, a health person having a dietitian. And it was just through a strange coincidence that it came to be. And I'm so glad it did. And I've kept it ever since. And I think of her as like my health coach. And so, I have probiotics every day, and the one that she prescribes me is one I can't pick up actually in a retail shop. It's a practitioner only one that I can get from her, and we change it. I do every year. I'll do like a gut microbiome test, and one of my favorite ones is Microba. It's actually an Aussie company, and they have a really interesting gut microbiome test. It's simple, it's personalized, and shows you what lives in your gut, and you can tailor sometimes, for instance, those probiotics you eat so that you might be getting maybe more of a probiotic type that you may not get in another particular bottle that you might buy. So I think if you're confused on consumer choice, this is where connecting with really good functional healthcare professionals can be quite handy. The ones that, particularly like dietitians, I think, and nutritionists are amazing. They can really give you some good inroads, and they can design plans for you to take the hard work out of trying to work it out yourself. That's the hardest part, isn't it? Sometimes trying to work out what you've got to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but gut health is a great area to build in your health. And if you've got good sleep health, it's good for your gut. And if you've got good gut health, that's actually good for your sleep, because that's the sleep gut connection.
Excellent stuff. Now, coming from a healthcare background, and we've talked about this already as well, but the shift work is a big thing. Even some of depending on the department that you're in, you may have to go back and forth between nights and days. And obviously the constant switching does have an impact on your sleeping patterns. I find with a lot of people, it's like they finally get used to being back on the day shift, and then it's time for them to get back on nights. What are some of the impacts of these frequent changes?
Yeah, look, shift work isn't good for the body. The body doesn't like this inconsistency, because every time we have to make a change, your circadian rhythm has to adapt. And, for some people that can be, that can be simpler said than done, but for others it can be very, very difficult. And we know that our body, a lot of things in our body are driven on our circadian rhythm. So when it becomes disturbed and dysfunctional, which it can do when we do shift work, um, we might start to see this bit of this domino effect in our health in different sorts of ways, and that becomes obviously very frustrating. So I think when you've got to bounce around, it's really, really hard. And I don't think there's a one strategy for all. I think sometimes you need to sort of to manage the change. You need to sort of work out what works best for you. Now, sometimes that can be a bit of trial and error. So it might be if you've been on days, for instance, this whole week, and next week you have to go on to nights. It might be, well, actually, I need to just start preparing my body, because essentially, if you would, if you're going to do nights all the time, your body really should just stay on nights all the time. But if you're flipping between the two, you might go, right, to get ready for next week, because now I'm going to stay up all night. You might start to go to bed in the few nights leading up to it later. to start to adjust. So you'll go to bed a bit later, and you'll do that like maybe 1 to 2 hours, every day leading up, so that when you get to the night, the shock, I guess you could say, isn't as much, because you've done some adjustment and you've adjusted it the other way. And look, I think when we're doing shift work, I think we need to be really aware of this. And the more aware you are, the more you can plan for it. And I think there's a lot of preparation required. So I think thinking about finding out what works for you. Now, what works for you may not work for your colleague. And sometimes I think we think that because something might work for someone else, then it has to work for us. And we get frustrated if we can't behave in the same way as our colleagues. So I think you've just got to work out what works for you. And sometimes to do that, it might be just be connecting with a health person if you're really stuck, like a sleep doctor or another healthcare professional. But obviously we're talking sleep doctor is a good one. So the other thing you might want to think about is obviously what we're eating again. So actually we really probably want to be more conscious about what we're eating, because we know that if we can have a good, healthy gut, then that's great for everything in our health. And we know that sleep and gut are connected. We probably want to also think about the type of routine we have when we come home after a shift, to get ready to go to bed. Are we someone that needs to come home straight away and dive into bed and do like a bit of like a split nap session where you've got to go to bed straight away for a few hours, then you'll get up, and then you'll go back to bed for another session before you have to go to work? Or are you someone that wants to come home for a few hours because you just want to wind down? Because in a normal 9 to 5 sort of day, people do come home from work at the end of the day and they spend the evening sitting down, unwinding before they go to bed. So are you the same on a shift work? Do you need to come home just for a few hours and just unwind and then go to bed? So I think finding out what works for you, and then thinking about what sort of routine do you have leading up to trying to go to bed. So things like having warm showers or warm baths are quite good. Dimming the light, closing curtains, because we know that, remember, when it starts to get dark, we have less light, more dim light, then our body starts to associate that with, I'm going to be sleeping now, because your melatonin will start to kick in and make you drowsy. So you probably don't want to come home and have all your lights on. You really need to be conscious that you need to try and promote sleep. So really thinking about the routine and actually being consistent again. So having a bedtime, a lead up to a bedtime routine. So because the body's quite learned. So if you can sort of do things in an order, like, we always clean our teeth, we go to the toilet, there's certain things that you need to do, like the things that you would do leading up to bed. If you can consistently have the routine that works for you, then your body will start to, the biological side of your body will start to associate with like, this is now, we're getting ready for sleep. So that will be sleep promoting. And I think one of the big things when we do shift work is that I just think we're generally more stressed. We get more anxious and stressed around, like, I think that I've got to get to sleep, and like work was so hard last night and I'm so tired, and I know I'm not going to sleep well today, and now I've got to go to bed, and if I don't sleep well today, I've got to go to work for 12 hours tonight, and how am I going to feel tomorrow morning? So I think there's a lot of anxiety that I think people who do shift work probably experience maybe more than people who don't do shift work. Because I remember when I was, and this is, when I was living in Brisbane, I'm in Sydney now. When I was living in Brisbane, I was early in my nursing days. I remember doing night shifts, and in the beginning, I used to do 1 or 2 here as an early nurse, and I just think I never thought much of it. It was, it was just a bit of fun going to night shift. But when I got to London and I started doing, like, when you're young, sometimes these weird kind of novelties, you're like the invincible, you don't think about this stuff, but as you get a bit older, it's like, becomes hard on the body.
Yep.
I remember going to London and I wanted to do a lot of travel. And this is when I was doing running around doing my agency nursing in the first few years. And in the UK, it became a bit of a shock to the system, because in Australia, I was used to doing an 8-hour shift. Now, an 8-hour shift turned into like a standard shift there is 12 or 13 hours. And it's like, my God, this is like, this is really, this is long. I've never, so I had to adjust to that. But so I ended up doing, actually, and I wanted to travel a lot. So I thought, right, I will start to do lots of days of work together. And so I started to do blocks of nights because I actually wanted to change from the madness of the days. And I thought that the nights would be easier. Look, and I think they are and they aren't, depending on what ward you're in. But I just, the night, you'd start at 7 p.m. at night, and then you'd finish at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I just remember, I used to walk home, which was quite good, actually. I used to have a 20-minute walk. I used to walk home. I used to feel like that really used to just like, it wasn't strenuous exercise. So you don't want to do strenuous exercise before you got to go to bed. That's not a good idea. But, a bit of light exercise. So I used to find walking home used to help. I used to walk through a really nice park in London, get a bit of fresh air. And but I was always conscious that I'm going, I've got to get to bed sooner rather than later, because I could never sleep 8 hours. It would be a miracle if I did. So I would be one of the ones who do like that split nap. I'd go to bed for a few hours, then I'd get up, and I'd have to, but I was always like going, oh my God, I've got to get back to bed as quickly as I can, because I used to watch the clock going, God, I've got only a few hours, and I've got to go back to work. And I used to know what I'd be going back to. So that anxiety about knowing what the night is going to be before the shift, before it even starts. So I just think people in shift work are more anxious. So I think you've got to find strategies to really alleviate your mental tension, and whether or not that's doing some meditation, or whether or not maybe that's things like aromatherapy oils. Do you need to actually get some aromatherapy oils and, pop it on the wrists and do some deep breathing and spray some stuff on the pillow. And these are sort of different kind of like natural sort of sleep aids. Like what are some of those things you could do in your preparation to helping you relax, that you don't feel stressed out? Because I think if you feel stressed out, you're going to find it really hard to sleep. That it's just exhausting. And I think you watch the clock more, I think, as a shift worker, always watching the clock. And it's just terrible. Like you wear clocks on your clothing, you've got, clocks on the phone, like you're always watching the clock. And so you've got to find ways to alleviate, I think, your the mental anxiety around this. And I think when you're more conscious of things, it kind of makes you more aware. And I think, look, everything in life, I think we've got to be self-aware. And the more self-aware you are of what affects you, what you need to drive you, and how you're impacted by certain actions. Because remember, we're all different. We're not all the same. To work out what you need for you, you have to be very self-aware, and you have to acknowledge things, and you've got to work out what you need. So they're just, they're just some snippets of things that if you're having to do the shift work, that you can take on board if they're things you're not doing now and you're feeling a bit, stressed out from the whole experience.
No, yeah, that definitely is some stuff that will help a lot of people because there are so many of us, especially so many people that are with us today that are doing that shift work and making those adjustments.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah. I think, when you've got families, if you've got kids and everything, or you've got dependents to look after, it makes it even harder. Like it's more complicated. And I think sometimes you've really got to have honest conversations in the household about what your needs are, and you shouldn't feel like you're being burdened, or you're being that you can't do that. But as a shift work, it is hard on the body, and you sort of, you do need to get the household on board with what your needs are, because if you become broken yourself, you can't help anyone else. So you've really got to make sure that you're kind of in tip-top shape yourself to be good for anyone else. So I think, if you've got dependents, and obviously in the household, you've got to try and have good conversations with the family or your friends, whoever it's that you're living with, to try and just to make sure you get like a good balance of what you need to be able to to manage the shift work because it's quite tiring. I don't do it, the shift work now, but I acutely remember what it felt like, which is actually one of the reasons, wasn't the reason, but it was one of the reasons why I seeked to have a change in the way that I engaged. I was working in health, which is how I ended up really leaving the full-time clinical space in search of how else I could work in health.
Oh, yeah, definitely interesting. Now, in terms of, we were talking again about adjustments and sleep. Now, we're going into daylight savings time, which means here, obviously, we're going to be losing an hour. How
Mm.
important is that hour? And, you talked about some strategies already that we could use to make adjustments, but is it worth doing that for the 1 hour? What do you think in terms of that?
Oh, such a controversial topic around the world, daylight saving. It
Yep.
is. It is. It's such a controversial topic. You've got the people that are advocating for it, those that are advocating against it, and it seems so funny. It's just an hour, but it actually is. It is a big deal.
Mhm.
The body finds an hour a big deal, believe it or not. And look, I think some people are more sensitive to it than others. Some people can adjust in a couple of days. Some might take much longer than that. And so I think, look, some simple strategies. If you know, this comes back to self-awareness again. If you know that you are someone that takes a little longer to adjust, that's okay. That's okay because we're all different. But you need to be planned. So you need to start preparing, if you can, maybe 1 to 2 weeks before, and start to, for instance, because your clocks will be going forward because now it's summertime for you. So you're going to lose the hours. So you'll want to, for instance, you might want to start, waking up that little bit earlier, but going to bed that little bit earlier. So you need to, if you can adjust your day from the time you go to bed and the time you wake up by about 5 to 10 minutes at each over 1 to 2 weeks, then by the time you get to the point where you've lost your hour, you've done some incremental adjustments along the way. It won't be such a big deal. And that's the same when you go back. But whenever you gaining is always easier than when you lose. And it's the same with jet lag.
Yeah.
Jet lag is the same. It can be, some people are more sensitive to it. So sometimes it can be easier when you gain it, harder sometimes when you lose it. And it can sometimes take a couple of weeks. But if you can sort of try and prepare the body 1 to 2 weeks before, it makes it not so much of a rude shock. But the reason, look, it's really quite controversial. Look, you'll hear different medical people saying that throwing interesting statistics around that, they notice when, the clocks, where they're going forward or back, that there's more of an increased incidence of people having heart attacks.
Yeah.
There's more of an increased incidence of people having accidents. And, the thought around that is that, sleep, when you have sleep loss or sleep deprivation, that is quite stressful on the body. So when you don't get enough sleep or your sleep becomes inadequate, the body finds that a bit stressful. And so the thought is that perhaps maybe that is the reason why we might see some of these, like the increased incidence, perhaps with people having heart attacks. I think workplace accidents is more around. So if when we have disrupted sleep and we're tired, or if that sleep loss, your things like your judgment is more impaired. So your reaction time to things is more impaired. I think, for people who, if you think about things like the condition called sleep apnea or obstructive sleep apnea, people that suffer with that, I'm sure there's a study out there that sort of says that people's reaction time is sort of 7 times more delayed. Like if you look at driving, like your reaction time is just so much more delayed.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's a pretty controversial topic. I mean, here in Australia, look, it's controversial as well. It probably becomes more controversial. My husband's family are from the country. They live on the land. So they're agri space. And it drives them a bit mad because they have to work a longer day. They keep working until while the sun is up. So for them, dinner becomes later. And I'm going, well, just come in early. They're going, no, we keep working while the light is up. We keep working. So they find it really tiring because they still get up at like the same sort of time because they want to do stuff, but then they go to bed so much later because the sun is up for longer and they keep working. So then they have dinner at like 9 o'clock at night. So here in Australia, like, so the country Australia they do not like daylight saving for that one reason. It really upsets the way that the day runs in the agricultural space. So, so that becomes a pretty hot topic. And, this will blow your mind, Bryn. Like Australia, we're obviously a population of 25 million people. And I guess we're a decent size piece of land for the amount of people that we have living here. But, when we have daylight saving, which we're in at the moment, the clocks are 4, they go back in April, we have 4 different time zones as a result of it. That's how crazy it is. So here we are in Australia, a little, country of 25 million, one piece of land. It's not like we're Europe with many countries or the size of like Canada or the US. We're in Australia, we have 4 different time zones, which come about because of daylight saving. And that in itself is just a headache, particularly in health when you've got to manage all sorts of rotas that just don't exist, schedules that exist in one state, they exist right across the country. You have to factor in patients over 4 different time zones. It's really quite mad. So, yeah, so it's controversial here as well.
Oh man, yeah, some interesting stuff. I didn't realize that about the 4 time zones in Australia. So that
yeah, it's a fun fact, but that's pretty mad, daylight saving.
So you mentioned your ebook. I'd be remiss not to mention vitamin C as well. Can you tell us about these projects and anything else that we can expect from you in the coming months?
Yeah. So, if you're curious, if you're someone who is actually looking for that journey for more sleep, we want to understand it more because maybe you're seeking better health or you're just not sure if sleep is your missing link. Yeah, definitely have a read of the ebook. It's a great read, and I've called it The Road to Healthy Sleep because it's the beginning of a series. So it's like the introduction, and I've focused that ebook around really so just understanding the basics of sleep, but actually diving into the micro and the macronutrients and the sleep-gut connection. So, but it will become a series. So if you're interested, definitely take a read of the book. I also, with vitamin C blog, like I love writing and I love simplifying science into relatable terms for consumers. So I write really interesting health content on sleep, but on lots of other interesting areas of health. So the blog has lots of interesting articles that help to open up your understanding to things that might be happening for yourself or for someone that you know. And then some of the things that I'm doing now with sleep, I do sleep coaching. I work with one of Australia, or probably one of the world's leading dietitians, Geraldine Giorgio, and she's in the gut space, and she does a lot in the with metabolic health and skin. So we do quite a lot together in combining our different skill sets, and we do a lot in the sleep gut connection space. So we help people rebuild their sleep through sleep strategies and also dietetics. So learning how to eat, what sort of foods do you need? How do you personalize that for you? Because obviously we've got people out there that suffer who are celiacs, who obviously need to have gluten-free, who are vegetarians, people who do shift work, people that have different health needs, might be diabetics, might have different cardiovascular things going. So they need a bit more of a heart health sort of diet. So we do some really interesting things there in that space to teach people how to eat, how you design food. And we give people lots of different tools to be able to go out and shop better, make it easy, because that's one of the things that's hard in health is sometimes you just don't, it's just so much choice. You don't really know what you're looking for. And then one of the things we're doing together is we've got a micro and macronutrient video series that is out this month because it's not just World Sleep Week, we're doing World Sleep Month. So if you want to see us in action, cooking and looking at foods, and you want to get the 101, then definitely follow us. So that's the Grocery Gals series. It's a bit of fun. Health shouldn't be boring. Health should be fun. You should be inspired and motivated for change. So we're doing a lot of that in our Your Sleep Hack group. So if you want to find out more, subscribe to Vitamin C blog, because that's where all the communications come from. The ebook is locatable on the Vitamin C blog, and then look, we love to hear from people. If there's anything that people are looking for or they want to know a little bit more about, don't be shy. Let us know, because we like to create things that people are interested in, rather than us just thinking that we know what we're doing. We like to know what people like. So share your thoughts with us so we can design things that can help you eat to sleep better, and actually learn to sleep. So that's Sleep 101.
Excellent stuff. Now we've covered a number of different areas of sleep and just everything that goes into it. Is there anything that you'd like to discuss that I haven't mentioned yet?
Gosh, it's such a big topic. We could talk for days on this. Look, I think, when it comes to sleep and health, I think you have to learn to be your own champion. You can't wait for others to do things for you. You have to be your own champion, and you have to seek things out. And if things aren't right in your health, they just have changed, or you're not happy about something, or you just don't feel the best, like those real niggling issues, seek the answers out. Don't be complacent. Be proactive. And, often say you can't do things alone in health. It's honestly too hard. And for a lot of people listening to this who are in health, you'll know, like the people that you see every day in the world, you'll know that there's no way that they could possibly do all the things for themselves that you're doing if they try to do it alone. And sometimes when you try and do things alone, you actually end up in a real spot of bother. And sometimes that's what helps you get into the ditch, because you ignore things, or you try and do it yourself because you don't want to reach out. And it's really funny why we don't always want to engage. We've always got these really interesting reasons why. Sometimes I think we feel inadequate, or we feel nervous, or we don't know who to ask. We just don't know where to go. And I think we sort of have to get over that. And if we think things aren't right, we need to go and talk to a health person. Find someone that you're comfortable talking to. Start with your doctor. I mean, generally when you're trying to sort stuff out in health, it's never just one person. You always need a couple of different types of people to get you kind of sorted. It doesn't mean you need their help forever, but you need a combination of people to help you get stuff done. And you need people. I think the best health people to engage with are the ones that they want to see you win, and they want to get to the root cause. So you can never really overcome anything in health and anything in sleep. You'll never overcome sleep problems if you never get to the root cause. So you've got to find out why the issue is there. And when you find out why, then you can actually build the plan. So you always need a plan. You need a plan to succeed, but you can't build a plan if you don't know why. And so that's probably my 2 cents, is sort of be your own champion. Don't be complacent. Seek things out. Don't be afraid to ask for help. You can't do it alone. It is impossible to do things in health alone. And health is really driven by what you know, what you understand, and who you connect with and what you connect with. And if you can line those things up, then you're on the right road. You'll get it sorted. And not to be frustrated that if it doesn't happen in 5 minutes, that's okay, because that's health. It takes a while. You've got to be patient with yourself and realistic. But if you want change, you have to be the igniter yourself. You can't wait for if you wait for other people, then you really have gotten stuck, because then you forcibly need people to help you. So you want to be proactive and seek out the answers. So that's I'm a big believer in that. And so that's really a lot of things I do in Vitamin C Health and in the blog, is all about empowering people to understand things and become your own champion, so but everyone needs a bit of a hand. So that's my 2 cents, Bryn.
Excellent. Now, as we wrap up, do you have a special message for the Healthcare Security Cast community?
Gosh, be kind to yourself and make sleep work for you. Sleep is hard, right? And when you do shift work, which I'm sure all of your community are doing, you need to find out what works for you. So if it's not working, you've got to get it sorted. And now that might mean that you can just do a couple of little simple things that I've mentioned today. Maybe there's a couple of tips you can pick up on things that maybe I've got in my ebook. But essentially, you've got to work it out, and either you need to do some simple things, or you need to connect maybe with a sleep doctor to actually help you, or a health coach to actually help you in that journey. But if you don't make sleep work for you, it will actually work against you, and that's just science. That's just the way it works. And sleep is really important, and it's good for your hormones. It's good for your heart health. It's good for your emotional health, your cognitive health, everything in your body. And obviously it's great for your gut health, which is the other great pillar in your health. But I think we have to be honest with ourselves when we do shift work. It's stressful on the body. It really is stressful. And we probably have to be more conscious of that and really be more strategic in actually what we do. So probably have to be more disciplined. And that's one great thing in healthcare. I think when you work in healthcare, we are quite disciplined in what we do in our environments. We're disciplined with our colleagues. We have procedures and processes to follow and adhere to. We have duty of care to the patients that we look after. So we're very disciplined in that. I just think sometimes we're not as disciplined with ourselves, and we sort of need to change that. And we need to become, we need to be disciplined with ourselves. And when we become disciplined, then everything else actually becomes pretty easy. Falls into like stacking the blocks. They all kind of fall into place properly.
Oh, absolutely. That's how it seems.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are the best ways for us to connect with you?
Best way is subscribe to the Vitamin C blog. So if you want to hear all the latest and greatest kind of stuff on whether it's video content, books, programs, other people that we're connecting with in health and what their stories are, Vitamin C blog, subscribe to the Vitamin C blog. You can also follow us on Instagram. You can follow us on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is a platform I'm quite active on. So if you're on LinkedIn, connect with me. And I'd say, probably go subscribe to the Vitamin C blog so you can get the ebook, because the ebook is a great start. And there'll be some other interesting ebooks coming, some that are outside of sleep, around the diet space, to help people in different areas as well. So Vitamin C blog. Excellent.
That's great stuff. All right. Well, thank you, Catherine. I appreciate you taking the time, and I think this was a valuable conversation, and hopefully we can have an impact on people getting the proper sleep.
Yeah, that's great. No, thank you so much for your time, and happy sleeping, everyone.
And this concludes another episode of the Healthcare Security Cast. The Healthcare Security Cast is available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music and Audible, and many other platforms as well. Check out our Linktree on your computer or mobile device. And this can be found at linktree/Brian Hamilton. That's linktr.ee/Brian, BRINE, Hamilton. Again, that's linktr.ee/Brian Hamilton. Or if it's easier, send me a text at 647-372-2042. That's 647-372-2042. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have or share any links you may be looking for. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, take care and stay safe.